Good morning. For the second part of our morning session in government operations and military affairs, we'll quickly go around the room to introduce ourselves to new witnesses who are here. I'm Representative Lisa Hango. I represent Franklin 5 on the northwest border with Canada. And we have on the screen with us, but we can't see her at the moment because screen sharing is happening, Representative Lucy Boyden. And
I'm Representative Sandy Pincinel, I represent Bennington 1, Dorset, Danby, Mount Tabor, Land Grove, and Peru.
Michael Morgan, Grand Isle Chittenden District, which is Albert, North Hero, Isle Lamont, Grand Isle, South Hero, and the northwest corner of Milton.
Public 18.
V.L. Coppin, Windsor 2, so Cavendish, Weathersfield, and Baltimore.
Mary Catherine Stone, Burlington. Kate Nugent, a part of South Burlington.
I'm Shay Waters Evans from Charlotte and Bart Heinsberg.
And our chair, Representative Matt Byron from Virgins, is in another meeting right now. So would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, thank you, everyone. My name is Liz Sharp, and I'm the Director of Community Economic Development and Food Security at Capstone Community Action, which is in Barre, Vermont. And Capstone serves the counties of Washington, Lamoille, Orange, and some of Windsor. The good news is that the Community Action Partnership represents all of the counties in Vermont. So hopefully you are familiar with your community action agency. And on this slide, you'll see that we have Brock and we have Tom Donahue here who will be speaking in a few minutes. We have currently Allison Calderera, who is our interim director at Capstone, Paul Dragon from CDOEO, Jenna O'Farrell from NECA, and Josh Davis from SEPCA. So we represent all the counties in Vermont and provide services that work with low and moderate income Vermonters to help folks who live in poverty, weather the effects of poverty, but also to build ladders out of poverty through economic development programs. So today I'm here to talk about one of our economic development programs. It's a statewide program called the VITA tax program. VITA stands for the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. And we prepare and file taxes for families who earn $67,000 or less, no matter what your family size. So whether you're a person of 1 or a person of 5, if your income is $67,000 or less, we can file your taxes at no charge. We do this throughout the Community Action Network. So at every Community Action agency, there's a VITA program. That VITA program is run by a program coordinator whose job is to recruit volunteers, train volunteers, and also set up remote sites. Because as you know, Vermont is very mountainous. There's lots of different regions. And so for someone to come to an office in Barre, for example, that might not be convenient. So we also have sites in our Randolph area and in our Lamoille area. And those are sort of called VITA sites. And we are starting, this is a full-time program thanks to funding from the Treasurer's Department. We're able to have almost a full-time equivalent. We are here today to ask for an increase in funding so we can make this a full-time program in all of the community action agencies. Because even though tax season starts basically in a few weeks, people have tax questions and issues that happen all year round. And the folks who have the lowest incomes often don't have the resources or the capacity to necessarily hire someone to help them with those problems. So while we're filing taxes starting in February through April, for the rest of the year, we're supporting those people in things like letters that they get from the IRS, or they didn't get their property tax adjustment, or whatever the case may be. In many cases, we're also helping people file past year's taxes because they just didn't get around to filing their taxes. The last few years, we've been extremely busy with things like the stimulus payments and all of the credits and things that were available to folks thanks to the pandemic. So on this slide, you'll see that we have IRS certified and trained volunteers. So every volunteer goes through a rigorous training program. You can either be sort of a basic level or you can be an advanced level, which means you can not just prepare taxes, but you can also review. So each tax goes through really technically three people. So you have the preparer, and then you also have someone who reviews it to make sure that everything's correct. And then you have a final person who submits it and just makes sure things like the homestead and property tax filings have been done. And as a result, we have a very positive return rate, and I think it's 2% get rejected. And generally that's because of something like, for example, someone filed for their child and it turned out their ex-spouse took those children, so therefore it gets rejected. So in 2024, so this last tax season, which was the 2023 taxes, we had $4,741,000 in tax refunds that we were able to give back to the community, and that included $2,679,000 in tax credits. So things like the earned income tax credit, the child tax credit, education tax credits that came back. The treasurer has been, the treasurer's office has funded us at $400,000 for the 5 community action agencies, and we are requesting an increase of $148,000, which would allow us to have full-time person to run their tax program throughout the year. I will also add that we do receive support from the IRS through the VITA program. That's a very small amount that comes to the state that helps support the program. And so, for example, at Capstone, the money that comes from the VITA grant goes to pay the site coordinator. So it's, during that temporary couple of months of doing taxes. And they generally work like 20 hours a week or something like that, at $25 an hour. So that money goes to this. What we're asking for is to support the program coordinators who are there year round, helping folks with their taxes. So I think that might be, and here's just some numbers.
Just may I excuse you for a minute?
Yeah, could I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
How do you define in Vermont the poverty line there? Do you use a specific number value? Do you take several variables into account? How do you assign that?
Yeah,
so if you're able to answer that.
Well, for the VITA program itself, 67,000
Right,
comes
I
from the
saw that.
IRS. So
That
like
comes
that,
from the IRS.
and that could be, 250% of poverty for one person. It could be, poverty level for 5 people, right?
Sure.
So for that program.
Right, that's where it gets weird.
That's where it gets weird, right? And so depending on the program, a lot of our programs, so some of my other economic development programs are based on 80% area median income, which isn't bad, right? Some of them go up to 120% area median income.
Mhm.
Some of them are poverty level programs. And so it really, we literally, I have in my binder there, the numbers, right? Like, are we talking, 200% of poverty, 150% of poverty? It really depends on the program.
Yeah, because it can be relative. I mean, you make $75,000 and you're feeding 8 mouths.
Exactly.
That's a variable.
Yeah. So the 67,000, that increases every year. Like last year was probably 66, the year before 65. So it
They creep it up
increases
a
a
little
little
bit.
bit. Yeah. Occasionally someone will fall through the cracks and, like we might be halfway through a tax and realize, oh my God, this person then, I forgot this form that puts them over income. We don't turn them away, right? We'll file their taxes for that.
That makes sense.
Um,
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So in fiscal year 2024, we had 118 volunteers across the state, averaging around 73 hours per volunteer. We filed just over 5,000 returns. And you'll see that we have some numbers on the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. And this also ties into, we have at the community action agencies, what's called a micro business development program, which works with very small businesses and helps people start businesses, supports them with workshops and planning and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of those folks who work with us in the micro business program also have their taxes filed at no cost because they meet that income guideline. And that's a really big savings. I did a little bit of the math to say that with the, and I'll use Capstone as an example, we do a lot of the taxes because we have a really robust program. And I'll just back up to say that the IRS VITA money that comes in, each community action agency gets it based on the number of taxes that they file. So Capstone gets more because we file more taxes. And so it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that if you're not getting that much money, you can't do more taxes, right? So if we can get a full-time program that has a program coordinator, there's much more opportunity for success in building those numbers so that the IRS grant can be a little higher for those. So at Capstone, it comes out to, with the VITA grant, last year, it was about $105 per tax return that it cost us to do that, with one full-time coordinator and 4 site coordinators and about 29 volunteers. And I think it was about 1,200 tax returns that we did. And from a statewide perspective of the 400,000 that we received from the treasurer, it was about $79 a return. So it's definitely a good investment for the people of Vermont, who otherwise would have to pay at the minimum several $100s to do their taxes. We just talked with a woman yesterday who hadn't done her taxes. Her tax preparer had passed away. And she said, oh, a friend told me about you. And she's literally someone who lives on Social Security and gets a small pension from her deceased husband and files a homestead and was being charged $450 to do that. And it takes us a half an hour to prepare her taxes, and, you know, an hour if you're looking, you know, someone's looking them over and filing them. And that's a big savings for someone who's living on a very fixed income. So this is an extremely valuable program that really gives a lot back to the community. And because it's in the realm of the community action world, we are able to refer them to other services that they may need. So if they, you know, find that they may need our food shelf, or they may be a family that could benefit from Head Start, or weatherization, right? That's another big thing that we do, is having these thousands of people coming through our doors that we can also provide additional services to. So I think that is the end of my VITA slides. And Tom will be here for another piece.
Great. So there is one more slide, and I'm guessing that's what he's.
That's what he's going to talk about. Yeah.
No, I had a question about. So is Thomas here?
Yeah, he's here, right here.
Welcome to come up, Tom, to the chair at the head of the table. You're welcome to stay, Liz.
Okay. I'll just. Oh, yeah. I'll sit right next to you, Tom. Does anyone has any questions about that?
Great.
And Tom, when you're settled, if you please introduce yourself to the committee.
Yeah, so my name is Tom Donahue. I'm the CEO for Brock Community Action, part of the Vermont Community Action Partnership, and our region is Rutland County and Bennington County. And I just want to say one thing about it, which a couple of weeks ago was actually a question on Jeopardy.
Oh.
Yeah, and I got it right. So
VITA?
Right, it was, yeah.
That's really interesting.
So, but one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, in addition to that, I'm so happy to chime in on that if you have any questions. But additionally, one of the things we've been talking about doing as a group, the 5 of us coalesce really well together. We work together hand in hand to to help alleviate poverty. And one of the things that we were trying to accomplish and just didn't get the homework done was the statutory change in the language around our the makeup of our board of directors, which is prescribed, but it was the term limits. So I just had some printed out, not real fancy, but I can pass that around if it's helpful to you. And all we're trying to do is actually just have this one section actually eradicate or lined out, if you will, from the statutory language around our board makeup. It doesn't change the board composition per se. The board composition is actually by statute also what do they call it, tripartite board. And I really like it because in our case, it's 12, we have 12 members on the board of directors, 4 of which would be public officials. So I actually have 2 state representatives which serve on our board of directors, Mary Howard from Rutland 6 and David Durfee from Bennington 3. And then we have 4 members of the community representing private sector. In this case, so we have like we've had the general manager at Lundgren Subaru, for instance, down in Bennington, serve on the board and so forth. So we have that sort of private sector represented on the board. But the third part of that tripartite board is actually people of low income. So we actually have people that we're serving. And I have some tremendous folks in that category, if you will, that really provide tremendous input and feedback to as members of the board of directors. So that works really well. The numbers work well. It's the statutory requirement on a limit, which is no more than 5 consecutive years. Right now, and speaking from real experience, if you'll allow me, I've served in my community on over 20 and statewide, over 23 different boards and commissions. Many of them appointed all the way back to Howard Dean. I've served on commissions for our current governor and currently do, as well as, the last 3 administrations, basically. But locally, many boards, most of them, from, Rotary Club to Rutland Mental Health Services and so on. It's just what I do. I like to volunteer my time. It is harder to find board members in today's environment for whatever reason. I don't know if it's, social media can be tough to pop their head up anymore, it's like whack-a-mole. You pop your head up, it knocks you down, you pop it up over here. It's getting difficult environment. People are just not volunteering like they used to. When we get good volunteers, we want to keep them. And we have some tremendous volunteers on our board of directors, and we're fortunate to have them. We're blessed. They're committed people. And the last thing you want to do is once you get somebody who's really engaged and doing a great job on your board and saying, I'm sorry, you're timed out. You've got to exit the board. And then we're in the predicament of trying to recruit somebody when it's in a harder environment to recruit right now, board members. This was back in, I was looking at this with Brian Collmore this morning, and he noted that it was a date out of 1981. This is, 2025, and times have changed. So the other really important thing that you should know is that we're all 501c3s. We're all private nonprofits who do the work of the state and federal government, basically most of the time on behalf of our communities through various programs and various departments of the state. We're your boots on the ground. However, as far as the board of directors go and the makeup of the board and so forth, we all have our own bylaws. Each organization has its own set of bylaws, like every 501c3 does. So each area can decide what they want for terms on their board. In other words, they can reflect your region, because ours doesn't necessarily have to be the same as CBOEO in Chittenden County. If theirs is different, if they like term limits, and if they have lots of volunteers and don't have the same issue that we do on the South, for instance. So what we're trying to do is put it back into local control, if you will, and let the boards decide, let the regions decide for themselves what the board composition, not the composition, but the terms will be, how they'll be dictated by the bylaws. It's that simple. Rather than having it mandated from a 25-year-old law that says no more than 5 years. Frankly, it's just not, you heard about all the volunteers we have to practice for the VITA program. Which leverages lots of money and salaries we're not paying, because these folks are all, providing their own time to provide this service. Doesn't cost the state anything, I expect. Same thing with boards. They're all volunteering their time. And we're very grateful. But to tell them they've got to go bye-bye at 5 years and they're doing, say, a stellar job on the board, it seems completely opposite of how we ought to be operating. And so we'd ask you if you would consider just making that housekeeping change.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very reasonable. As you said, times have really changed, because in the past, there were many people wanting to volunteer their time to be on boards and not so much now. I know the boards that I've been on and nominating committees for those boards, we have really struggled to find qualified candidates who are actually interested in giving up their time to serve on those boards. So.
Nugent.
Yeah, Nugent.
Thank you. So I have a background in nonprofit and education, so this is near to my heart, and I totally hear what you're saying. I wonder if you've thought about boards are all different, people come and go. Sometimes you can have really incredible people, and sometimes there are folks that need to do something else or can really cause some problems for an organization. So without that structural component of like there being a transition off that's in there, have you thought about like how do you handle that when you have like a challenging person that really isn't helping the goal, like without that statutory requirement?
Right, and that is the conflict in eliminating board terms. Like in 5 years, if you had somebody you didn't like, you can exit them, and in a respectful manner. But the other problem is worse, not being able to track and retain. Having said that, getting back to that local control, that's where if some community action agency wanted to say, gee, we'd really like to be able to have that option, that's where we put the control back in the local region, if you will, let their bylaws dictate that. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from around the table? That was a really good question, Representative Nugent, because I've actually experienced that. And it is tricky, but I think allowing each individual organization to have their own bylaws and encouraging them to have that conversation as they review their bylaws, I think would be important. And if that point is considered, maybe they can come up with some type of language that would be applicable to that situation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, yeah.
Appreciate you being with us. And if nobody has any further questions, we can go off live.